read in your hearing. Yea, in the hearing of everyone attuned to this parliamentary channel across the length and breadth of our nation. Hear ye the word of the Lord. Fret not yourself, because of what? Evildoers. Neither be thou envious against the workers of iniquity, for they shall soon be cut down like the grass, and wither as the green herb. Trust in the Lord, and do good. So shall you dwell in the land, and verily you shall be fed. Delight yourself also in the Lord, and he shall give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way unto the Lord. Trust also in him, and he shall bring it to pass. And he shall bring forth your righteousness as the light, and your judgment as the noonday. Rest in the Lord, and wait patiently for him. Fret not yourself because of the man who bring wicked devices to pass. Cease from anger, and forsake wrath. Fret not yourself in any way to do evil. Why? For evildoers shall be cut off. But those who wait on the Lord, they shall inherit the earth. Isaiah 40 verse 8 says, the grass withers, the flowers fades, but the word of God shall stand forever. Now, honorable members, in the privacy of your home or office, kindly meditate on the remaining voices of Psalms 37, verses 10 to 40. As time did not permit us to read the entire chapter of this powerful Psalms. It shall do your hearts good. Finally, honorable members, I have come by this morning to say to God's people across the length and breadth of our nation, not to worry about a thing. Hold on to God's unchanging hands. Stand and keep on standing on the promises of God, repenting when necessary, trusting, obeying, loving Almighty God and one another, forgiving one another in the face of humility, shall result in these Bahama Islands becoming the envy of our surrounding neighboring nations. Shall we pray? Lord God of righteousness and truth, grant to our Governor General, Dame Marguerite Pendling, and her government to members of Parliament and all in position of responsibility, the guidance of your Spirit. May they never lead the nation wrongly through love of power, desire to please, or unworthy ideals, but laying aside all private interests and prejudices, keep in mind their responsibility to seek to improve the condition of all mankind. So may your kingdom come, and your name be hallowed. Honorable members, praying the prayer Jesus taught his disciples to pray, say, Our Father, in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses. Forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Thine is the kingdom, power, and the glory, forever. Amen.
Dr. Hubert Minnis, Peter Turnquest, Brent Simonet, Desmond Bannister, Brentwood Wells, Jeffrey Lloyd, Dr. Dwayne Sands, Marvin Dames, Frankie Campbell, Dionisio de Aguilar, Michael Pintard, Darren Hanfield, Romuald Ferreira, Lanisha Rule, Bransel Rule, Ellsworth Johnson, Philip Davis, Warren Albury, Lakeisha Parker Edgecombe, Hiram Lewis, Hank Carlton Boleg, James Albury, Travis Robinson, Adrian Gibson, Donald Saunders, Frederick McAlpine, Hank Johnson, Mark Humes, Michael Folks, Miriam Reckley Emmanuel, Reese Chipman, Ruben Ramming, Ricky Markey, Shannon Dawn Cartwright, Chanel Ferguson, Glennis Hannah Martin, Picewell Forbes, Chester Cooper.
Good morning, honorable members. Members, we have with us, gracing our presence this morning, is a group from Genosco Kids Educational Center. Can you stand for us, please? That group is headed by Mrs. Teresita Cunningham, and she's assisted by Mistress Rule. Thank you very much. Honorable member. Honorable members, on a not so pleasant note, I've been informed that the 51st Speaker of this Honorable House, Oswald Ingram, has been hospitalized and is apparently scheduled to go on surgery. And so we would want all of us to pray for his health, for a successful surgery and a successful recovery. On an even sadder note, a good friend of mine, David Hanna Jr., from the island of Great Inagua. I want to express condolences on behalf of the greater community of Great Inagua, to the family of David Hanna Jr. on his passing, particularly to his wife and to his sisters, Sherry and Mona Lisa Hanna, and to his lovely daughter. It's amazing that we are all just one heartbeat away from death. On the most exciting moment of his life, I'm informed on Monday, while walking his daughter to the altar on her wedding day, he collapsed and died in the church. And so that must have been extremely traumatic to everyone present, including his daughter. And so we trust that God's peace will be with that family and this time of mourning. And finally, before we move on to the order of business, I just want to invite all residents in Nassau Village to take care of their health and their heart. We are launching our health and fitness program this Saturday morning with a fun run walk, which begins at 6 a.m. from the Jonathan Square Park. And we wish to invite all residents and all persons who are health conscious to join us as we go on a 4-mile run and walk on Saturday morning. Moving now to the order of business, introduction and swearing in of new members. Laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Kalani.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, with your permission, I'd like to give a communication as to the communication and the laying of the document that I want to lay, that is, the Disney heads of agreement are interconnected.
Yes, honorable member. Permission granted.
Here. Mr. Speaker, I rise in this honorable House of Assembly to table the heads of agreement between the government of the Bahamas and Disney Cruise Line Islands Development Limited for development of a cruise facility at Lighthouse Point in southern Eleuthera. Our administration, Mr. Speaker, is pleased that this development will bring sustainable development, jobs, and economic opportunity to communities in South Eleuthera that have struggled economically for decades. In keeping with our commitment to good governance, inclusive of transparency and accountability, the government, through the press, announced the signing of the heads of agreement. The signing took place on 7th of March. Because the agreement directly affected the good people of South Eleuthera, we conducted a town hall meeting to highlight significant elements of the agreement. The response, Mr. Speaker, was overwhelmingly positive. The same day, the government issued a press statement which many of the details of the agreement made public. In a subsequent press statement, we announced that the full agreement would be laid on the table of the House of Assembly at the earliest possible date, which is today, because the House did not meet last week. I am pleased, Mr. Speaker, that this agreement is being laid on the table of the House of Assembly, which is in record speed. This agreement is now public for the Bahamian people and the world to see, including various stakeholders, the press, and Her Majesty's loyal opposition. The process has been a model of disclosure, openness, and good governance.
Yes.
The strategic process we followed from the signing of the agreement to a town hall meeting in Eleuthera to laying this on the table of the House in short order is a part of our program of accountable governance. In the past, various agreements by other governments were never tabled in this honorable House. Unfortunately, some agreements remained sealed from the Bahamian public for years. Mr. Speaker, as noted in the government's press release on the Lighthouse Point development, the development has a projected investment of between $250 million and $400 million. Disney has completed acquisition of the property from the private seller. The property they acquired was not Crown land, it was private property. Under the heads of agreement, Disney will ensure a minimum of 120 Bahamians will be employed directly during the construction of the project. Disney also has committed to aim for an overall ratio of 80% Bahamian workers to 20% non-Bahamian workers during the life of the construction phase of the project. Some of the core elements of the Disney Cruise Lines Island Development Limited development include low-density development and sustainable design, public access, and the restoration of various historical and cultural sites. Disney will convey approximately 190 acres of the land purchased from the private seller to the government of Bahamas for conservation and a national park. Other elements of the project include the integration of Bahamian culture and artistic expression into design of the site and experiences offered. and partnership with the community to develop training and professional development programs. Disney, Mr. Speaker, has invited officials from the Bahamas to visit Hawaii to observe how its Aulani Resort and Spa integrates the culture of Hawaii into the resort. The Disney Cruise Lines began its cruises to the Bahamas in 1998, and since that time, the economic impact on the Bahamas economy has been significant. With the development of the Eleuthera, Disney intends to increase the number of ship calls to the port of Nassau and or the port of Freeport by 30 to 40% over the number of calls made by Disney ships in 2018. And Mr. Speaker, the government notes record of environmental stewardship and will ensure that the project is implemented in a manner which safeguards the environment and is in the interest of the people of the Bahamas. A full environmental impact assessment will be done. No construction or work can be done until this is completed to the satisfaction of the government. I am pleased that the good people of Eleuthera, especially South Eleuthera, are embarking on a wonderful new day with a reputable company of the standing of the Disney Corporation Limited. Mr. Speaker, before I close, I just want to point out that there was some concern about us having the announcement, making the announcement first in Eleuthera. We thought it was appropriate, Mr. Speaker, that as Disney or South Eleuthera, an area that was suffering for a very, very long time, we thought it was appropriate that we show complete respect for the community, and they should have been the first to hear the changes that were coming. And I think, Mr. Speaker, moving forward, investment that affect certain islands within the Bahamas, out of respect, they should know what is happening rather than hearing. So I do not apologize to anyone for respecting the population of South Eleuthera in such a manner. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the good people of Bahamas, and I thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, at this point in time, I would like to table the heads of agreement with Disney and the Bahamas.
Thank you, honorable member. Order that the document be brought up.
One down.
Order that the communication do lie on the table.
More to come.
Further laying of documents by ministers.
Thank you.
I recognize the honorable member for Kalani.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the House a copy of the following. Agreement between the government of the Commonwealth of Bahamas and DCL Island Development Limited.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as the Deputy Prime Minister is not here, I would table this document, and I would announce at some point in time during my next communication as to who will be the acting Prime Minister during my absence. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the House a copy of the following. The Financial and Corporate Service Providers Anti-Laundering and Countering the Financing of Terrorism Rules 2019.
Order that the document be brought up. that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers.
Thank you, Speaker. I beg leave to lay on the House a copy of the following: the Securities Industry, Anti-Laundering and Countering the Financing of Terrorism Amendment Rules 2018. 19, my apology.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg leave to lay on the House a copy of the following: the Credit Reporting Regulations 2019.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg leave to lay on the House a copy of the following: the Bahamas Registered Stock Directions 2019, Bahamas Registered Stock 2039 and 2049.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg leave to lay on the House a copy of the following: the Bahamas Registered Stock Directions 2019, Bahamas Registered Stock 2020.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following: the Road Traffic Box Junction Regulations 2019.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following: the Road Traffic Fixed Penalty Amendment Regulations 2019.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following: the Price Control General Amendment Regulations 2019.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers.
Mr. Speaker, there are no further laying of documents.
Statements and communications by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Kalani.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the world community was shocked and deeply saddened by the mass shooting of two mosques in Christchurch, New Zealand, which took the lives of 50 people while they were at prayers. There are many others who were wounded and who will have to endure additional surgery, years of therapy, and the physical and emotional scars of the terror inflicted on their bodies, minds, and souls. I know the House will join me in expressing our condolence and solidarity with the victims, their loved ones, and the people of New Zealand. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs sent a diplomatic note after the tragedy. Last week, I sent a letter of solidarity to New Zealand Prime Minister, the Honorable Jacinta Ardern, whom I had the honor and great pleasure of meeting during the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in London last year. Mr. Speaker, the Bahamas stands in solidarity with the international community in rejecting, in the strongest possible terms, all hate-filled supremacist ideologies which often metastasize into violence. These include racial, ethnic, religious, and other forms of supremacy based on false notions of the superiority of some based on their circumstance of birth or their human identity. As a country, Mr. Speaker, we uphold the inherent dignity of all citizens of the global commons made in the image and likeness of our Creator. The international community must be ever vigilant in rejecting the violence and hatred directed against our fellow human beings because of race, ethnicity, gender, religious affiliation, economic circumstance, sexual orientation, or disability. We stand in solidarity with the people and government of New Zealand who are demonstrating resilience and courage in the face of extremism, hatred, and great loss. We pray God's guidance and comfort for them in the face of such overwhelming grief. I thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, honourable member. Order that the communication be brought up. Order that the communication do lie on the table.
I think the Minister of Foreign Affairs had made a statement.
Honourable member.
I don't know who by whom. I don't have the facts. I'm wondering, do you have the facts to the son of our story?
Kingston has made the intervention.
Mr. Speaker,
Honourable, the chair recognizes the honourable member for Kalani.
with respect to what the member brought forth, I think the Minister of Foreign Affairs had adequately addressed that issue. Mr. Speaker, before I take my seat, I just want to inform this honourable House and the Bahamas at large that I will be away as of tomorrow. I'll be traveling to the United States. I have a meeting. I'll be meeting with the President of the United States, Donald Trump, I and 4 other heads from the Caribbean, the Prime Minister of Jamaica, the President of Haiti, the Prime Minister of Dominican Republic, and the Prime Minister of St. Lucia. And during my absence, Mr. Speaker,
Honourable members.
during my absence, Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Renward Wells will be acting Prime Minister of the Commonwealth of Bahamas. So, just a political throw. There's Hope Chester. Wells was on that side. He's this side. Now he's Prime Minister.
Further statements and communications by ministers. The chair recognizes the honourable member for Southern Shores.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm always humbled at the opportunity to rise on my feet on behalf of the good people of Southern Shores, and my gratitude to them is eternal. I beg your indulgence, Mr. Speaker, to extend condolences to two families in Southern Shores, the family of Vincent Clinton of Flamingo Gardens and the family of Philip McKinsey of Millis Heights, who are mourning the passing of both persons. May their souls rest in peace and that the families will find comfort to deal with the challenges that they are presently facing. Mr. Speaker, also, as I join you in welcoming our youngsters in the gallery, I wish that you would permit me to also acknowledge the institution that played an important role in my being here, which is R.M. Bailey. Face of pride, Mr. Speaker. Face of pride. Face of pride can be accounted for by many of us here present. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, R.M. Bailey is the single school with the most persons in Parliament today. So it would be fair to say that R.M. Bailey is a place where leaders are born. And that pace of pride continues. I'm advised that there was a ceremony just yesterday honoring more than 400 students of R.M. Bailey who made the honor roll. Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure of the size of the population, but I believe it could be a little over 1,000, and for 400 plus of them to make the honor roll. Mr. Johnson, the principal, the faculty, the staff, the custodian staff, the lunch vendors, the parents, the neighboring community, all should be proud and should continue to support that institution. Mr. Speaker, to the matter at hand, today I'm privileged to report to this honorable House an account to the Bahamas for our participation and performance at the Commission on the Status of Women, CSW, held from 10th and is still going on to the 22nd of March, 2019 at the United Nations headquarters in New York. The 63rd session. CSW is the principal global intergovernmental body exclusively dedicated to the promotion of gender equality and the empowerment of women. During its annual 2-week session, representatives of the United Nations member states, civil society, non-governmental organizations, and UN entities from all over the world gathered to discuss research initiatives, progress, and commitment to further action for the protection and advancement of women and girls. Mr. Speaker, if I'm not mistaken, I'm advised that this year the Bahamas made history as we had the largest delegation ever on record, which comprised of 90 persons representing a diverse intersectorial grouping of stakeholders. I'm very pleased to report that the demographics of our delegation included 35 non-governmental groups that provide services and assistance to women and girls, including the Pilot Club, Zonta, Teen Life Skills, the Bahamas Union of Teachers, Bold and Beautiful, Girl Con, the Josiah Institute, and a number of other persons. This delegation included 4 political parties, including independent candidates, 70 NGO representatives, Mr. Speaker, who sacrificed time away from their places of employment and committed to self-fund their travel. 6 youth delegates, Mr. Speaker, under the age of 18 from 2 of our family island communities. Technical officers from the Department of Social Services, Gender and Family Affairs, and Urban Renewal Commission, as each area works intimately with social protection, access to resources and services for vulnerable groups of women and girls. Mr. Speaker, I was especially humbled and privileged to have as part of the delegation the Office of the First Spouse, who has committed a great part of her work to the empowerment of girls and women and to the assurance of working towards gender equality, equity, and parity. Mr. Speaker, for the past 10 days, our delegates contributed to the international dialogues and competently shared successes of our national development as they joined representatives from 140 countries who participated in many high-level meetings and hundreds of side event sessions that focused on the priority theme for this year: social protection systems, access to public services, and sustainable infrastructure for gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls. Mr. Speaker, the experience was extremely intense and highly productive. Issues such as increased safety for women and girls in public spaces, their access to clean water, adequate public health centers, affordable child care, pension in old age, and public housing for survivors of domestic abuse were a few of the topics of discussion for the delegates. During the many speeches and communications by executives of the General Assembly, it was noted that when infrastructure, public services, social protections are lacking, women and girls are often the ones most impacted. It was noted that their needs must always be factored in when policies are designed. Their voices, Mr. Speaker, should shape the decisions that affect their lives, because when women are at the table making decisions, they bring changes that benefit entire societies and nations. Mr. Speaker, by attending nearly 350 meetings, General Assembly sessions, and side event sessions, our delegation would have been able to enhance their knowledge on a variety of topics such as STEM, economic empowerment, mobilization of civil society, social justice, gender equality, prevention of sexual and gender-based violence, human trafficking, social entrepreneurship, sustainable development, gender pay gap, and women in media. The sharing of ideas improves the condition of women and girls as ideas and innovation translate to tangible actions through programs and policies in both public and private sectors. Mr. Speaker, I'm most thankful to the entire delegation that represented the Bahamas. Additionally, I'm grateful to our New York mission staff for their dedication and hard work rendered toward a successful trip. Mr. Speaker, as a policeman of 29 years, I always deemed a successful trip as firstly one where everyone on the operation gets back home safely. I'm pleased to say all but 2 of our members of that delegation are back home safely. We are thankful for the financial assistance from private sector, and I want to pause here because while I was away, I understand that there was some attempt to cause confusion about who paid for who and who didn't pay for who. Let me state for the record that 70 of the persons that were part of the delegation were either self-funded or assisted by others. And so I want to take this opportunity to thank the private sector who assisted in funding some of our younger persons, especially Generali Insurance, which afforded 5 of the staff members from the Department of Gender the opportunity to participate. Mr. Speaker, these experiences are important in our journey to ensuring gender equality for our women and girls. As this 63rd session focused on social protection systems, access to public services, and sustainable infrastructure for gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls, the diverse composition of the delegation of the distinguished ladies, and yes, we had 2 men that accompanied me, so the distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the Bahamas would have been exposed to not only examples of these priority areas having been realized in other countries, but also provided the platform to encourage the delegates to continue their important and integral work with women and girls throughout the Bahamas by strengthening their resolve to empower women and girls. Mr. Speaker, I'm happy also to report that not only was the Bahamas at the heart of conversations on best practices, policy, sustainable infrastructure, and alliance in terms of representatives, but I can report that the Bahamas held the honor of presenting the CARICOM statement at the General Assembly on behalf of the CARICOM countries. These experiences and exposure provide invaluable technical knowledge to each delegate to the benefit of our country. Mr. Speaker, I look forward to sharing the concluding statements of CSW 63 with this honorable House. I pray for the continued support of all of our NGOs and faith-based organizations that work with us, partner with us in the department, and I reassure them of our commitment to nurture those partnerships. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Order that the communication be brought up. Order that the communication do lie on the table. Honorable members, just before we proceed, we have a distinguished gentleman in the gallery that I wish to recognize at this time. My good friend and former teammate, Bahamian Ambassador to China, His Excellency Sterling Robert Lloyd Quant. Further statements and communication by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for North Abaco.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I rise to make this brief statement on a recent trip to Romania, where we attended a conference on resilience, permit me as well to acknowledge teachers and students. Bucharest. The teachers and students and Mr. Speaker, to acknowledge the presence of our ambassador, our esteemed, distinguished ambassador to China, His Excellency Ambassador Sterling Quant. Mr. Speaker, I also crave your indulgence to, as the matter was raised, the Prime Minister indicated that we had adequately addressed it, but it's on the record of the House. On Monday, Mr. Williams was attacked, unfortunately, in Pembroke Pines when he entered an eatery to do something. Immediately we saw on social media and elsewhere this thing being touted, this unfortunate event, and we completely empathize with Mr. Williams and this unfortunate event that took place. But immediately we saw on social media, in fact, the press asked me first on Monday, while we were doing the solar park thing down at the QE2, about it, and I had no knowledge about it. And so we immediately saw on social media that this thing was being touted as a hate crime. The Prime Minister just spoke about New Zealand and what hate crimes represent in the world today. No individual or country will support the activity of hate crime or racism in any way, shape, or form. The Bahamas is one such country, as you heard the Prime Minister indicate just then, condemns hate crimes. And for a hate crime to be perpetrated against a Bahamian, and we as the government of the Bahamas do not act accordingly or appropriately, is, to me, a complete non sequitur. And so immediately we contacted the Consul General in Miami to find out what her office knew about the event. They contacted the police in Miami, and the matter has now been reported as an assault, an aggravated assault. I listened to a report given by Mr. Williams on a Florida television station where he indicated himself that he never knew, he heard no such, he said nothing about racism or hate crimes or the kind of words that these people use when they talk about these things. As far as we're aware, the police has reported it as an assault, and that's where it remains at the moment. There was no official report to the government of the Bahamas that Mr. Williams, a Bahamian citizen, had been involved in some form of hate crime. The government doesn't have the luxury of social media and other people who can just put things into the atmosphere without verification. And so the ministry, which the Prime Minister gave me charge over, will always seek to be as diligent as possible to find supporting evidence before we speak. And I advise Bahamians in general, be very careful of social media and what we take in and put out as a result of what we find in social media. It was reported by BP, Bahamas Press, and it was written about by the chairman of the PLP and asserted to be a hate crime. That's where it was reported. That's the only place where it was reported as a hate crime. I'm yet to see some official statement from the authorities in Florida or elsewhere that verify this to be a hate crime. And to hear what the Prime Minister spoke about just now that happened in New Zealand, we should not make light of these things. These are very, very serious events that seem to be taking the world, a whole of the world. And I caution all to be very careful about how we address these matters in the future. Now, Mr. Speaker, to my communication. Mr. Speaker, I want to report to the House the ongoings of a delegation which I led to attend the International Conference of Building Resilience to Natural Disaster to the country of Romania, which took place in Bucharest. And so by invitation, Mr. Speaker, of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Romania, on the 9th of March 2019, I led a delegation inclusive of Captain Godfrey Roll, Chairman of the Bahamas Maritime Boundary Delimitation Committee, and Captain Stephen Russell, Director of NEMA, to Bucharest to participate in the International Conference on Building Resilience to Natural Disasters, which took place at the Palace of the Parliament of Romania during the 12th through 13th of March 2019. Ahead of the conference, on the 11th of March, a one-day political dialogue arranged by the Global Affairs Department, Latin America, and the Caribbean Division of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Romania was held between that country's foreign minister, His Excellency Mr. Theodore Maleskinu, CARICOM foreign ministers, and the Secretary General of CARICOM, Ambassador Irvin LaRocque. In the outcome, the CARICOM delegation met with His Excellency Dr. Raid Arafat, Secretary of State and head of the Emergency Situations Department, which is Romania's equivalent of SEDEMA, Foreign Minister Maleskinu, Her Excellency, Mrs. Ekaterina Andronescu, Minister of National Education, and with heads of Romanian universities. Generally, Mr. Speaker, our discussions focused on the imperative for collaboration and cooperation to mitigate climate change, building resilience to various natural disasters, the impact of listing CARICOM countries as non-cooperative jurisdictions for tax purposes, and potential education opportunities at graduate and postgraduate levels for CARICOM students. Romania, Mr. Speaker, which presently holds the rotating presidency of the European Union, who established diplomatic relations with CARICOM on the 24th of January 2019, reinforced throughout our visit its interest in supporting CARICOM via a cooperation program. In the result, an MOU intended to implement and execute specific technical and scientific cooperation programs and projects which take account of the priorities of the integration process within Caribbean community and the vulnerable nature of small economies of CARICOM was signed. It is worthwhile noting, Mr. Speaker, that Romania is seeking CARICOM's support with their bid to become a non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. During my intervention at the opening of the Conference on Building Resilience to Natural Disaster, I informed attendees that the last 3 catastrophic hurricanes to hit the Bahamas resulted in a cumulative cost of near $700 million US, among other things, Mr. Speaker. Additionally, I reemphasized the importance the Bahamas attaches to combating climate change, the preservation and protection of the environment, and to building resilience. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Order that the communication be brought up. Order that the communication do lie on the table. Further statements and communications by ministers. Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, at this time, there are no further statements and communications.
Honorable Member, just a moment then. Sure. Just before we continue, since there are no further statements and communication by ministers, I just want to say a few words to a very special lady. To my wife of nearly 39 years. I know you're listening. It appears as if I will be with you shortly. I want to wish you a very happy birthday today. And like the member for Baines and Ground Sound say, I'm fired up and ready to go. The chair now recognizes the Honorable Member for Bamboo Town.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me thank my Honorable Prime Minister and leader for appointing me to a post to hold down the ship of state for him until he returns. And I want my leader to know he will have it as he left it. Mr. Speaker, I do now move that the House suspends until 10 a.m. Wednesday, the 27th of March, 2019.
Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the business of this House do suspend until Wednesday, 10 a.m., the 27th of March, 2019. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Honorable member, I'm in the middle of the motion. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand.
I just wanted to, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, it's not correct what he said. At least one daily newspaper reported the matter as being confirmed as a hate crime. And so I think that I appreciate that the minister has addressed it, but he ought not to castigate or seek to demean concern about an issue. And I think what he did was appropriate to put it in its correct light. But it's not a political issue, nor is it the basis for hostility. It's a matter of concern for Bahamians, and we appreciate that the minister has spoken to the issue, but it was not just on social media or from the chairman of the FNM. In at least one daily, and I sat right here and researched it, reported it as such.
Thank
Yes.
you, honorable member. Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the business of this House do suspend until 10 a.m. Wednesday, the 27th of March. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. The business of this House stands suspended until 10 a.m. Wednesday, the 27th of March, 2019.